everybody. Welcome to the Truth Will Set You Free show. This show is brought to you by TLBTV and the Liberty Beacon Project. I'm your host, Linda Diane Wattley, and I have to say, I am excited today for the guest that I will be talking with. His name is Sam J. Shelley. How you doing, Sam?
Good, Linda. Great talking to you tonight. I'm always doing good.
Oh, that's wonderful. Sam is an entrepreneur, even though he haven't made that statement, but he's actually an entrepreneur. He is a person that will calm you down, even if you don't want to be calm, because he has that kind of spirit. He is a person that has so much to give, and he's sacrificing his whole life to do what he feels like God has given him to do. When he was 6 years old, he was ran over by a van that practically took his life. And to say what happened after that is just unbelievable. He has suffered through, 6 diseases? Uncurable.
Yeah.
Was 6? 5?
It was five. It was 5. But who's counting 5, 6? And they all add up after a while.
It's a combination of so many things like bipolar, MS, migraines, potential suicidal.
Yeah, I was suicidal for the bipolar. I had psoriasis, the psoriatic arthritis.
Right.
I was a real train wreck.
But today he is a minister, inspirational speaker, public speaker, author. He has been on TV shows, podcasts. He has his own YouTube, and that's very interesting if you ever get a chance to watch it. He also is a vessel that has the spirit. Some call it channeling. I call it being available, where he shares something that quiets the mind and strengthens the spirit. We'll talk about that later, but he's going through what they call the one, and we'll talk about that also. He is also the founder of Head Trash Anonymous, and we're going to talk about that later too. I don't want to give away everything, but he's a little busy guy. And it's such a pleasure to have you on my show today, Sam.
Yeah, it's really nice to be here. And you were mentioning the entrepreneur. I'm actually a social entrepreneur. That means after all my operational expenses are met, I donate the profits to charity.
So that makes you a social entrepreneur?
Yes, because I don't keep all the profits. I don't keep all the money for myself. So social entrepreneurs, as long as their operational expenses are met, the excess goes to charity.
Oh, okay. How did you come up with that?
It's been around for a while. Social entrepreneurs are what's growing. Is that social entrepreneurship is growing out there. After operational expenses are met, the excess is donated to charity. So I help them. They help me. Together we help the world.
Oh, okay. I want to talk about Sam before age 6 in the van accident. Who was Sam before then?
Sam before then was, what I remember at that time that I was an extremely shy child. I remember hiding behind my parents and things like that, I was not a people person at all. I was really scared of the world, if you will.
Was there any particular reason?
No, I was just very, very shy and withdrawn. I was the only child, so I was very, very withdrawn, very inside myself.
So were you able to have friends in school?
Yeah, I had some friends, but I didn't have many friends. I just remember had a neighborhood friend, but that wasn't like a social butterfly. It was quite the opposite of that.
So was your parents older parents?
No, not necessarily. They just, I don't know, it was just the way I was just that really withdrawn inward.
At the peak of your baby life?
Yeah, I remember being at 6 years old, when I wrote that in my book, I Don't Dwell, about how shy I was as a child. And I remember when my cousin came over dressed as Santa, hiding behind my parents. And that was typically what I would do, is hide behind my parents. I was probably, at that time, they didn't really have autism at that time, but I was probably on the scale, I would imagine, at that time, because it was really socially awkward.
Okay. And so tell us what happened to you at the age of 6 that changed your life basically forever.
Yeah, so at age 6, it was the last day of school. I remember hearing the ice cream truck, then begging the mom for money for ice cream. So I ran out and got some ice cream. But after I got my ice cream, coming around the the ice cream truck, there was another van coming down the road, not paying attention. He was like in the service van. There's a little bit of a bend. So one time I crossed, and time I saw him, it was too late. So then he ran me over, which to the head trauma, the broken elbow, the broken hip. Spent about a year in the hospital and a few months in rehab after that.
And the thing I found interesting, because I read your book, I Do Not Dwell, and you said your family decided to relocate, and you said that was worse than being in that accident.
Yeah, because you got to remember, I was socially awkward. So at 6 years old, suddenly you go into this new environment. So you had a few friends in your neighborhood, and then suddenly you're back to like no friends. So for social awkward me, it was unusual. It was odd. And making all those new friends at school and everything else was just really, really overwhelming.
Wow. So when did you realize that you had some problems? Okay, because at age 6, how were you before you had all these other diagnoses of MS and bipolar? Was you able to have any normalcy up until what age that you got those diagnoses? Did you kind of like recover from the accident?
Well, the thing with the accident that I'm learning today is from the severe brain injury, the head trauma, that actually probably led into the bipolar. So from that brain injury probably created the bipolar. So during my high school days, I was undiagnosed. So I would go from this really mild-mannered, shy kid in high school to one that would argue with the whole class. So I was like up, down, all over the place during high school. And there was really no help coming for me at that time. I wrote that in a book. I felt like there was no help coming for me. And it wasn't until my early 20s when I became very suicidal and had to be hospitalized so I didn't kill myself, is when I was diagnosed with bipolar.
Wow. So do you feel like those was correct diagnosis?
Yeah, because that was definitely the brain injury creating the bipolar. Then from the bipolar, and the thing with my mindset is I was constantly dwelling in thoughts. I was always poisoning my own inner environment. And that's what I tell people today, that autoimmune diseases is the body is attacking itself. And my self-criticism was providing the fuel for those diseases, for the multiple sclerosis, the psoriasis, the arthritis. They're all autoimmune diseases. And I saw all my negative thoughts were poisoning my environment, if you will. And that's what I see with all autoimmune diseases today. I haven't met anybody today with an absolute love of themselves that has an autoimmune disease. We all have an element of self-criticism. And the self-criticism provides the fuel for these autoimmune diseases. For some people, they don't get them because the genes aren't there. But for some, those genes will turn on from that negative voice, providing all that stress and fuel, if you will, for these diseases. So that's what I'm just seeing with that. So that's why I really help people with this head trash today, how to get rid of this negative voice. Because I'm really taught how to get rid of this negative voice. We're always taught to cherish our opinions, our thoughts, our beliefs, but sometimes these don't serve us. We recycle this trash over and over again. And that's what I was doing. I remember being suicidal, feeling that life was too difficult. I should just kill myself. That was my head trash. But see, it was my thoughts. I took my thoughts as true at that time. It was later when I realized that I have thoughts, but I am not these thoughts. And that's why I try to get people to see with their head trashes, they have thoughts, but they're greater than them thoughts. They're that perfect spirit within them.
So how did you come to the conclusion about this perfect spirit within a person?
Well, this happened at age, let's see, 44, roughly age 44, this happened. And this is part of my healing journey, what I talk about in the book, is that perfect spirit. So at this time in 2010, roughly, this happened. Because I was pretty much a couch potato in 2010 with the multiple sclerosis. I really just sat in front of the TV all day because I really couldn't really do much of anything else. So I would watch anything and everything on TV, and I saw these ghost hunting shows. I'm like, well, I don't know if this is real or fake. I have no idea. It's TV. Well, anyway, so it was one of these ghost hunters tweeted, hey, we're having this event in Philadelphia. Come check us out. So it's like, yeah, why don't I go? I can probably put in my cooling vest, get my cane, and head down to the ghost hunt for an hour and just see what happens. Because I was naturally curious. That's one thing about me. I'm naturally curious. So it's like, okay, so is this ghost hunting show real or fake? I have no idea. So I went in there like a skeptic. I don't know what to think of this ghost hunt. So I was pretty much sitting in this one spot for a while. Nothing was happening. It was uneventful until somebody put a flashlight out, and some distance away, and they said, turn this flashlight on. It came on. Turn this flashlight off. It went off. So that was going for like 3-4 minutes. But I was a skeptic and say, well, that's not my flashlight. So I put up my flashlight and it did the same thing. I was like, there's something here, but what? And also some other experiences I couldn't explain, but that was the most profound. But since I was very curious, I started to read some books after that, trying to figure out what was going on. But at that time in my life, my eyesight was very poor, so I could only read a few pages at a time, or I would get this terrible migraine if I read any more than that. So it took me a long time to read all these various books. But what I found was there's one book that had a few pages on meditation, just a few pages. And one of the benefits they talked about with meditation was inner peace. I'm like, I need peace because I was completely overwhelmed with life, with all my diseases, my illnesses. I was just completely overwhelmed and stressed with life. So my quest was for peace. And through peace, that sparked a transformation. So that night when I read about meditation equals inner peace, I began with a simple 5-minute practice that night. Just 5 minutes of just sitting there and disconnecting from the world. But it was very difficult to just sit there because the mind was constantly telling me, you're missing your favorite TV show, you're missing your email, you're missing this, you're missing that. It's creating that to-do list. Our head trash creates that to-do list. And that doesn't bring us lasting happiness. So what I saw was like, that's just my mind going, but I was like, my mantra was, I deserve time to myself. I deserve 5 minutes to myself. So that kept me going with that mantra, I deserve 5 minutes. So the first 2 weeks were the toughest with my meditation. But then after that, it started to get a little bit easier. So by the second month, I was doing about 5 minutes twice a day. Then I went to about 10 minutes twice a day. And by the end of the third month, I was doing about 15 minutes twice a day. Then one evening, after meditation, I was just finished, and I just heard a voice say, perfect spirit. I'm like, that's it. My spirit is perfect. It's just the flesh that's damaged. Then I simply knew that all was well. All sense of fear just went away, and the mind got very quiet. Like all the head trash sort of like just vanished. So then what happens is when the head trash goes away, it's hard to explain. Once the head trash goes away and you have the sense of peace, your intuitive voice comes online, if you will. So I just had this intuitive voice telling me how to recover the body and mind. And I did that over 17 months, just following and trusting this intuitive knowing, if you will, my gut reactions. Like, I need to do yoga now. I need to drink more water, less TV, less caffeine. And that's the intuitive voice. It's very short and sweet, like do yoga, drink water, less TV, because it's not telling a story. Typically, if it's coming from the mind, it's like, I need to drink more water to get hydrated, and starts listing all the benefits. That's the voice of the mind. The intuitive voice is 2-3 words of really clear what you need to do. And it worked. And that's all I talked about in my book, I Don't Dwell, was all these intuitive steps that I did. And like I said, I never had a teacher. My only teacher was my own intuition, our perfect spirit. But the only way I heard that was by clearing this, get rid of the head trash so I can hear this. So that's what I see today. And this is what I talked about recently at a conference in San Diego, not San Diego, but San Jose. And Deepak Chopra was there and everything else. It was really a big, big conference. And my presentation was letting go of the head trash creates the space for transformation. And that's what I do in my head trash clearing sessions today that you experienced, was getting this quiet to allow your intuitive voice. And when this is quiet, you feel really relaxed. You feel really at peace. And when you're in that state, your intuitive voice has a chance to make itself known, because it's usually whispering to you all the time, but this mind's got a bullhorn and you can't hear this voice at all, because it's always telling you that something is wrong, something is not right, and you can't hear this voice. So when you have this peace, now you can hear the whisper, and you can follow that whisper. And really,
how did you come up with that term, head trash?
Well, I just heard this in some, like a sales meeting. I heard talk about like the head trash creating limitations. I'm like, that's really what it is. It's head trash. It's mental garbage. Because before I was talking about like, don't dwell on thoughts, let go of thoughts. Everybody knows that. But once you identify it as trash, it's something you can physically see yourself removing. If you can actually see that You can visualize that trash and you can separate yourself from it. So that's what I really do with Head Trash Anonymous. And my ultimate goal is Head Trash Anonymous groups throughout the world. What's one another helping each other, how to deal with the overwhelming life, dealing with the stress of life, how to get rid of the monkey mind, if you will, this constant chatter, and having these worldwide support groups helping each other with that, of letting go of this garbage.
Well, how is that going? Is people catching on?
Well, my goal is to launch this really big in January. I'll start with a few groups in New York City and a few groups in Philadelphia in January, of just doing these support groups. Pretty much like you have AA all over the place. Why not Head Trash Anonymous all over the place? Because everyone's dealing with stress.
Yeah.
Stress is the silent killer, but there's no real support groups out there to deal with stress. And that's what Head Trash Anonymous will help with, dealing with the stress of life. And there's a real need for that in the world. So this is why I do this, to help people find a life without stress, with some peace.
And the more I hear you talk and what I have read in your book, it appears to me that you have not been diagnosed with PTSD.
Well, I did have PTSD. At 6 years old, from the van accident, was PTSD.
That's what I was thinking, but you never mentioned that in the book.
No, I didn't mention that in the book, but I probably didn't mention the book, or maybe I did mention it, but not very strongly. But yeah, it was definitely PTSD. Most people don't realize the number one cause of PTSD is car accidents. So I had a van accident at 6 years old and a car accident at 16. So I had 2 cases of PTSD, and I cleared that as well. And that really became known when I was writing my book, the first chapter, recalling that van accident. Then I saw all the trauma still there. So that for writing the first chapter, I had to stop for a month and clear my own PTSD through my practices of these hidden shadows, if you will, that need to be dealt with.
Because that's all I kept hearing when you were talking, that PTSD can benefit from what you sharing with everybody about the trash.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's like accumulation. It's also a repeating of something that you don't need.
Right. Yeah. And I talked to a veteran as well. He's like, we need this in the world. We need help with PTSD, natural ways to deal with it, natural ways to get rid of our head trash. Because you just get rid of this mental garbage.
You said car accidents is one of the top leading.
Yeah. Car accidents.
Post-traumatic stress disorder?
Yeah. Car accidents are the number one cause of PTSD.
More so than war?
Absolutely. Look how many car accidents there are in the world. And look how many people you see from car accidents. Sometimes they're afraid to drive. There's a reaction they feel from that, and that's PTSD. When you can relive that accident, that's PTSD. And most people that are in a car accident, it feels like time stops. I remember from my own accident, it feels like time stops. And when you're in that state, that's PTSD, because your mind's, trying to figure out how to sort and process all this.
So have you addressed PTSD in your presentations, or is it just something that you just know about and you just haven't shared?
No, I do share that. In my presentation on California, I definitely talked about PTSD. I definitely shared that out there, that, part of our head trash is that PTSD. It becomes head trash to PTSD. If you're reliving that over and over again, you're recycling that accident over and over again, that's head trash. Anytime you're recycling these emotions, it's head trash.
PTSD is my baby. That's something that I live to share with other people because I have it in so many different avenues. That's why I'm talking about it. And I immediately saw the benefits of what you were saying, that it can assist in the healing process of PTSD.
Yeah, and that's what my big goal is, to have thousands of chapters of Head Trash Anonymous in the world, being this change agent for people saying, I'm really stressed. I really had a bad day at work. Let me go to this meeting tonight and let's deal with this.
That's beautiful.
Or my wife's angry at me. What am I doing wrong? And go to a meeting and say, oh, I'm putting all this garbage onto my wife. That's why she's angry at me. If I could learn to clear this. There's so many things that we don't realize that are head trash, that are creating so many problems.
So what is your first major approach when you are going to assist someone?
Well, first thing I do is I just talk to him like we did, like what's going on for a few minutes, because we did a session and I talked to him a few minutes to see what's going on, just seeing really what's going on in their life. Then it's the best I can explain yourself for my session. I just drop into a meditative state and I allow that intuitive voice within me to guide the way, to unwind their mind, if you will.
Oh, okay. So you do that as a group as well as individually.
Yes. But
What
see,
you're talking about, I want to share with everybody my experience I had with you. Okay?
yeah.
I'm excited about that. I decided when I went online, I saw opportunity to contact him and schedule a session with him before the interview. And I did it during my lunch hour. And the experience was so surreal, so soothing to my mind that after we got finished, I was ready to take a nap. And that was not part of the plan. What he has to offer is making himself available for spirit to reach you, to calm you, and to remind you how divine you are. And it's like, I still smile about it because I knew I was okay, but I always knew you can always be better. And it's like, and it just keeps growing. You don't just stop with that session.
No, it's onward. It keeps on going and going and going.
I'm just letting you know what happened.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's the unwinding of the mind.
Yeah. And it just don't stop. It's almost like I had a antibiotic or something that just went through my whole spirit, mind, body,
Yeah, so for some people that have a lot of issues, they can get like a package and we can just keep diving deeper and deeper and deeper. And then it gets really profound. Like we just did one session, if we did 2 or 3, you would be in a different, even a different space today. You would have been this.
He has a gift. I have to tell people he really has a gift. I did my own investigation.
And you experienced it.
It was beautiful. And it's just nothing like leaving this world for a while.
Yeah. Then
the hard part is coming back.
Yeah, and I do try to bring people back to the best I can to realize that, yeah, it's nice to be in this transformative space, but we're still here for the human experience. So.
Right.
And then after that session, I do my little intuitive reading, which just confirms the session, which was a beautiful message for you.
Right. I was like, wow. Because you had mentioned the age 13.
Yeah.
That was so pivotal in my life. And
Yeah.
I was like, wow, I know exactly what he's talking about.
Yeah, but that's not me. That's spirit. Because spirit, right. The same spirit within me is within you. And it's all this one, we're all one big spirit in different bodies. So we're all this perfect spirit. So it's my perfect spirit just simply talking to itself. What's going on with this person? And I can't explain it. I would say some people, this happened to you at 5 years old. This happened to you at 7. This happened to you at 18, 22. It just comes. I have no idea. I'm not pre-planning. I'm not stalking people. It just, you see my eyes are closed. I'm just, if you've watched.
Very serene, so serene.
Yeah. So it's just.
Don't do it while you're at work. I was not expecting anything like that, but it's like floating. It's a floating type experience because I was so relaxed. Like I said, it wasn't like I was like engulfed in problems or anything like that. I'm a firm believer that you can always be in a better place, even when you're at your greatest moment in life.
Mm-hmm.
You can always be at a better place. And it's just, like I said, it's just still escalating.
Yeah, it will continue to escalate. If you did have a lot of problems.
So soon too.
What was that?
He does make himself available. I mean, that appointment was so quick. It didn't take you long before you received me, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, because I have my online calendar, and people can just book time. Yes. And that's the thing. I do have a coupon for your audience that they want to experience. And the key word is this truth, just the word truth. Because I want people to realize their own truth that's within them. It's not up here, our real truth is right here in spirit. So I figured truth was the perfect coupon for 20% off.
Okay, so you're saying that if they come to your website?
Yeah, if they go to my headtrashanonymous.org, they can go down there and buy a session. They can enter the coupon truth and they get 20% off, whether it's a single session or the pack.
Wow, that's beautiful. Thank you.
Yes.
You know, he is such a giving person. I thought I was call myself a little premature entrepreneur as an author, but I'll give away a book in a New York moment. He will give you his book, I Do Not Dwell, if you just sign up for his newsletter. And that book is just as great as his sessions. But no, it's great. Yeah, yeah, both of them are great. But anyway, he offers that also, and that book is like Steps to a Better Place. His sessions are spontaneous at that moment at a better place. He lets you control yourself in the book, but you don't have no control in his sessions. I'm sorry, you just don't. And
Well, spirit takes over. Yeah.
I was not expecting that either, but it's a beautiful moment. And he's offering that today by going to his website. Tell him the website.
It's headtrashanonymous.org. And you can see, work with me down there. You'll see head trash clearing session with intuitive reading. And you can just see down there, you can click on that little buy. And you can say if you want a 1 or a 6-pack. And you can enter the coupon 20% off by entering truth. And so you can just try one session or you can try a pack. And if you have a pack, then if you have a lot of problems, then we start unwinding each one of those problems or challenges in your life. So after 6 sessions, you have 6 recordings, which are simply little meditations. So you can go back and watch them anytime. So Linda can go back anytime, watch her session, and she can go deeper and deeper into that one area that we covered. So if we're covering 6 sessions, 6 different areas, like, oh, I'm really dealing with this today. This meditation will take care of this. Dealing with this today. So you have your own individual library because it was just created just for you, which is a beautiful thing. Every one I do is different because it's that person's journey.
So you are also a minister. In what sense is your ministry?
Well, I'm actually an ordained interfaith minister, which basically means I preach love. I just simply teach love. I don't get into all the dogma of religion. I just pretty much share love because Jesus had 2 great commandments: love God with all your might and love thy neighbor as thyself. Although I would have reversed it, love yourself, then love your neighbor. Because a lot of people have an easy time loving the neighbor, but they have a really hard time loving themselves. So when people really see that love within you, when you have that, then it's easier. Then your love to your neighbor just radiates. You don't even have to try.
And today you are no longer bipolar. You don't have MS.
No.
Tell people how that happened.
It was all from hearing that voice say perfect spirit and following that. Then when I heard a voice say perfect spirit, you could call it my hand of God moment, if you will. That miracle that was created. That when I heard a voice say perfect spirit, I realized that's it. My spirit is perfect. The flesh is just simply damaged. Then I simply know a real strong knowing that all was well and all sense of fear just washed away because the mind got very quiet after I heard that voice and all the trash sort of washed away, quickly got rid of a lot of trash quickly.
So how did you get the strength to step out on faith? I mean, the 9 to 5, you just dropped it. How was you able to do that?
Just a leap of faith. Everything we have to do is a leap of faith. Like hearing that voice, taking a leap of faith. That is who I was. And listen, and really trusting that intuitive voice. This is how I recover the body and not doubting it. It's just blind faith. That's what it is. Just blind faith.
Just blind faith.
Yeah, just say it's going to work out. I mean, I didn't reverse, all these diseases didn't go away for nothing. There's a greater purpose behind it to show people that if you're alive, there is always hope. And I've seen people too that I've worked with that were in very bad shape and they're home recovering today.
Because of what?
Because to get them to realize that if you're alive, there is always hope. If you get a diagnosis like cancer or a terminal disease or chronic disease, that becomes a story in your mind, becomes trash that I have multiple sclerosis, so this is the way I'm supposed to be. I'm supposed to be tired all the time with fatigue. I'm supposed to be disabled. All these become stories. But if you let go of the stories, it's just your body transforms because these stories keep the ailments alive. If you can unwind those stories, then the body has a chance to heal. The body knows how to heal itself if we can get it out of the way.
So do you remember that first experience where you made a difference in someone else's life?
Let's see. Well, let's see. Well, I don't remember a lot of the stories, but the most profound one that I can share with you that I think is really interesting was it happened a couple of years ago. It was somebody that's been to my talks before, my workshops. Well, her friend reached out to me and say, "Hey, so and so was in the hospital with stage 4 cancer. Breast cancer has metastasized." So, yeah, this is really serious stuff. Stage 4 cancer that's metastasized. So I went to the hospital, and she was in really, really bad shape when I saw her in the hospital. I mean, really, really bad. I saw she wasn't so far away from death. But what I did with her, I sat with her for 2 hours. Like we were in that space for just like 15 minutes. I was in that space with her for about an hour and a half, hour and 45. I was in that space with her. And the way she described it, because she's home now recovering, but the way she described it on Facebook was, when you were doing this meditation, I saw this gold energy just weaving in and out of me. And when I close my eyes today, I still see this gold energy weaving in and out of me. And I can't explain that. All I can see, that's grace just working through her. That I was able to get her mind quiet enough for this grace to work through her. You know, her own grace was there. It was just her mind blocking. So once I was able to get her mind quiet enough after an hour and a half or hour 45, this grace just opened up because it knows the way. So she's home now recovering.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, so I can't explain it because it's not me, it's spirit.
Did you once mention that Jesus actually tapped you on your shoulder?
Yeah, I had a personal experience with Jesus, yes. Well, I was in a deep meditation. He laid hands on me. That's the best I can explain it.
Wow.
Yeah, so now I lay hands on people and I can't explain what happens. When I'm in that space, and when that space I'm in a meditation, if I lay hands on you when I'm in that space, it's really profound. So I do that in my group sessions, my personal one-on-ones. You know, through Skype, through the phone, I can't really lay hands on you, but my subtle beings can. But that's a different story. I have the team of subtle beings too that can come around, but they don't usually need to be around. Usually, the energy is so strong that you feel it. Look, I can see you're a little bit different today. There's a little more peace there. That this works, you know, through distance. This just when I'm in person, then there's this more profound effects. I'm not sure if I worked with a person with cancer over the phone would have been as effective as me in that space laying hands on her, because I also laid hands on her while I was in that space. And I know people have gotten really profound things when I laid hands on them when I'm in that space, because then I'm this real conduit for spirit.
You love it too, don't you?
Yeah, it's just this calling. I just feel that the need to do this, but I also have to find the balance too. That I need to support myself, so I have to find this balance. So I need to take care of like my expenses, and once my expenses are taken care of, then I can donate the rest to charity, and that's just the way it is.
And one of the things you said is children are already enlightened.
Yeah, you take a child, like a small child that's very young, and you can see when a child's like a baby, he's enlightened at that point. The baby is enlightened. Then what happens is he starts getting the story about who he is, and this head trash, you know, makes his light appear darker, if you will. But our light's always shining bright. It's just this mind creating this veil of darkness that blocks the light. So we're all enlightened. We just got to remove this, and the light's always there. Then you see it's always been there. But for the children, it's there until that mind gets in place. You can see when a child gets around 12, 13, their mindset really gets in place. You can see when they're really joyful as a kid. By the time 13 comes, they change because the head trash is really becoming ingrained. Their identity is really becoming attached.
So your experience with church and Christianity early on was kind of difficult for you?
Yeah, it was. And what really made Christianity difficult for me, when I was a bipolar in the hospital, my uncle's a traveling minister. He came to the hospital that day when I was in there for bipolar, so I didn't kill myself. I think it was probably I think it was probably my most serious suicidal attempt. But he actually came into the hospital and tried to cast the demons from my head. And that sort of pushed me away from religion.
So you're not denomination pretty much, or what is
So
what?
I see all religions equally valid if you get to the root of that religion, which is that golden rule, just sharing love. But then all these other religions add rules on top of that. But if you go down to the golden rule in that religion, do unto others as you have done to yourself. If you get down to the basics of the religion, then they're all valid. But unfortunately, man has gotten in the way with all this judgment and all these rules that take away from the prime teaching of just loving one another, supporting one another.
So what made you decide to write that book?
Oh, the way I wrote the book is everybody saw my transformation and like, you got to write about this. You got to write about this. So that was my impetus to write about it, what I went through. So I wrote the book, I Don't Dwell. Now I'm working on another book now, talking about the head trash paradox. How do you know to believe this voice or this voice, the intuitive voice? Because sometimes we'll have a gut reaction that I shouldn't be doing this, but your mind will convince you that you must do this. Then you look back and say, oh, I should have followed my gut reaction. Look at this mess I created now. So that's our paradox. Which voice do we listen to? So I want to talk about that in my next book.
So you was able to just instantly turn into an author.
Yeah, why not? There are no rules in life. Exactly. All the rules are made up in here. We have all these rules that we're not good enough or we're not worthy. Worthiness is a big one for a lot of people, that feeling that they're not worthy. Like, who am I to write this book? Who am I to do this? Who am I to do that? It's just these mental rules. We just got to let them go.
And you have a YouTube channel. Tell us what you be doing on YouTube.
With YouTube, I just shared little talks. I need to do more of those. I want to start doing my own little weekly show, if you will, on YouTube, where I just talk about this head trash and ways out of it. And maybe have some guests once in a while that talk about, letting go of this head trash and just doing that. But I share all sorts of talks, how to deal with depression, how to deal with self-confidence. I just have a lot of talks. And on my book, I didn't talk about my near-death experience because I didn't want people to see that he had a near-death experience, he's special. But I want people to realize that my near-death experience didn't really influence my life because I was very young when I had it. So I want people to see it didn't really make sense to me till I wrote my book. And I was like, oh, now I understand my near-death experience. My near-death experience was there to show me that I didn't need the outside world to heal myself.
Really?
Yeah, because at 6 years old, when I was run over by the van, that night after surgery, what I remember was being placed back into the body. I remember being placed back in the body. Then I saw these three beings, maybe you can call them angels or whatever you will, three beings on each side of me removing my life support.
At 6 years old?
Yeah, at 6 years old. At 6 years old, I remember being placed back in the body and like the three angels around me removing my life support.
Wow.
But I was too young to understand the lesson, because my mom said the next morning, I remember specifically because this really stuck with me, was, why'd you remove your tubes? I remember my mom asking me that when I was 6 years old, but she didn't step back and say, how could this 6-year-old boy do this? How could he remove his life support? Because the van drugged me for a while too. So I was all bandaged up and everything. I was in no shape to remove my own life support. But to her, there was nothing else out there. So it had to be me.
Wow.
So that was my near-death experience. But since it was suppressed, though, from my mom saying that why'd you do it? So that suppressed that memory that I had to do that. But when I look back, it's like, no, she didn't step back. I didn't step back and say, there's no way I could have done this. I was too young. I was in this really bad shape. I wasn't really, with it, if you will, to do this. And I wouldn't have the strength or even the arms to do that because I was all bandaged up. But she didn't step back. Most people don't step back, pause, and say, what's going on here? How could the 6-year-old boy do this?
Wow, that's phenomenal. And you also met Brad Pitt, right?
Yes, I've worked with Brad Pitt in the movie 12 Monkeys at that time. Yeah, so the one scene in 12 Monkeys that's he really took me, I see a lot of myself in this one scene. I worked with Brad on one scene specifically. And this was when it was in the 1990s when I was bipolar, really bad shape, teaching him how to play a crazy person for this movie. So, because Brad Pitt's always like studying his roles on how to do these characters and stuff. So we role played that one scene, the tour of the psych ward. And yeah, so that was my Brad Pitt experience.
So why was you in this? Because of suicide?
No, because the producers of the movie reached out to my doctor and say, do you have anybody that Brad can talk to? So my doctor was looking for volunteers that Brad could talk to, and I volunteered. I didn't really know who Brad Pitt was too much at that point because he was still a relatively young actor. At that point, he just finished taping. I forget what movie he just finished, but at that time, 12 Monkeys, and before that was another movie he just finished recording. But at that time, in the early 90s, he was just an up and coming. But I remember at that specifically at that time, he had body doubles running all over town. But yeah, so actually, I met him on the movie set.
But you were in the psych ward because of suicidal tendencies?
Yeah, so I didn't kill myself. Yeah, I was in a psych ward, so I didn't kill myself.
So how was you able to help him because you weren't crazy?
Well, no. Well, the thing was, I was after at the hospital. You know, it was a few years after the hospital, but I was still bipolar, and so I wasn't inpatient at that time when I worked with Brad. It was a few years after being inpatient. But I just told him, you know, how that mindset is, so he can play that role. You know, the bipolar mind's a very dark mind. It's always dwelling and think about the worst things of life. And that's what I talk about, you know, when you're suicidal, that your mind gets so dark, you can't see your loved ones out there. You can't see your support network because all you're just enveloped in this darkness. All you see is this darkness. And you just see this darkness, and it's really a heavy space. And I've worked with people in that space as well to get them to see their own light, get them to see that darkness is just in their mind. And I'm able to break through with that. And I have helped some suicidal people, but it's not something I do too much. But I do want to act more in that space, suicide prevention, because people don't realize that unless you've been there, you know how dark it is.
Wow. That's the only way to describe it is dark, huh?
It's extremely dark. It's like you're in a closet with no light. You can't see anything outside. You just can't. You're just completely in darkness. That's the best way I can describe it. You don't think about your loved ones or nothing. It's all about you, and you just really a lot of self-pity.
So how did your parents deal with you? Did they think something was going on with you at any time in your life?
They didn't. They didn't deal with me. I just hid in my room. They weren't very good. They weren't parenting very much, if you will. They weren't, like I see, parenting is really being the guide for the child trying to navigate through life. They didn't do that.
Would you say it's because they didn't know how, or they were busy?
They just didn't know how. What do you do with this really withdrawn child? They just didn't know. They just didn't have that experience because they weren't only children themselves. They both had a lot of siblings. So to be an only child, they didn't know how to deal with an only child that's very withdrawn. They just had no idea. And they had no, I guess, incentive to go read books or whatever to try to understand. They just let me be in my room, and I would just be isolated in my room all day. That was my world.
And usually a child is like that because something unjust happened to them, but yours, you were just literally born with it.
Yeah.
Wow. So what was your first step to others?
The first step to
reach out to others, to want to put them in a better place?
Well, the first step was, you know, when I saw I had this healing and I wrote the book, then I was like, I really just got to start a meetup group and see if I can help some people. And that's how I started with a meetup group, and I had my first group meeting in 2014. And people were really getting what I was saying, that I was seeing I was making a difference. So I was like, this is what I need to be doing. So then that's what I started to do, you know, help people out of this dark mind that's creating so much stress, making life so overwhelming. I remember how overwhelmed I was with life. You know, what else is going to go wrong? I would wake up each morning like, oh, great, another day. What else is going to go wrong? that was my world. And
So,
typically something else would go wrong, typically.
wow. So you said you're trying to have a goal to be global with your that trash.
The Head Trash Anonymous, it needs to be
Yeah.
a global group where it's supporting each other. Because that's what I saw. You know, I attended some Alcoholic Anonymous meetings to support a friend. And what I'm seeing in those meetings is it's just people talking, but not really sharing ideas on how to get that. They do that in one-on-one with their sponsors, but in the group, they're just talking, but there's no support. And I want the Head Trash Anonymous to be more interactive. Oh, you're dealing with this. Have you tried this? Have you tried this to break this mind, the mental story? You know, have you tried this tip? Have you tried this? You know, like my book, I Don't Dwell, has a whole bunch of those steps. So eventually there will be a guidebook, you could say, for the Head Trash Anonymous. So facilitators will learn, like, here's 50 steps. So here's the scenario they're facing. Here's the step they can try. Here's the scenario they're facing. Here's the step they can try. Because there's all sorts of ways out of this mind, this trash. And if I can just document them and have this process like a facilitator guide, then there can be thousands of chapters around the world. And I can go visit some of these chapters. I can just go around just visiting chapters and just
Sure.
supporting them.
Yeah. Yeah, because I was getting ready to say, because that's when it's really surreal. You show up and you can do it as a collective. That'd be really nice.
Yeah. So I would have to have like guidebooks and teach facilitators, and there's universal ways out of this mind. There's definitely some key things I've seen to get people out of their mind. And I can just have a document like, here's the top 100 tips to get people out of their mind. And a facilitator can just go through them. Oh, you're facing this. I know I like this tip. I like this tip, and just work with them. Why not?
So when do you get excited?
When do I get excited? When I help people. When I really get lit up when I help people. When I work with somebody in a session that has a lot of issues, are typically down, they're really low energy, but afterwards they're smiling, they're laughing. There's a lightness to them, because this heaviness, this head trash is really like trash. It weighs you down. I mean, for some people, when you're suicidal, I mean, you're completely bogged down in the mud. The head trash really bogs you into all this weight and mud. It's very, very heavy. And when you can let some of this go, there's a certain lightness. People smile. I worked with someone and they laughed for 2 hours straight afterwards. And I had to stay with them for 2 hours, make sure they were okay, because they were just in hysterics for 2 hours, just laughing at all the stories that they took as their truth.
Wow, that's phenomenal.
Yeah. I just don't know what's going to happen when spirit can just get in there and just unlock something like they did for this person. And now they're completely mentally free, if you will. There's a liberation. They're not up here anymore. They're just enjoying life.
So do you be energized afterwards, or are you exhausted?
I'm energized. When I'm in spirit, I'm energized. When I do sessions, sometimes if I do sessions too late at night, I won't sleep that night.
Wow. Like having caffeine.
I don't drink caffeine. I don't do caffeine. It's rare for me to do caffeine. There's this natural high, if you will, because this grace is always trying to descend, trying to ignite our own fire. But this is just blocking. If you can unblock this, then grace can descend. That's the best way I can describe it.
So today, what do you want people to think about that you shared?
What I really want people to think about, is to realize that you have all these thoughts going through your head, all these to-do lists, all these stories, and just to realize that you have these thoughts, but you are not those thoughts. You are much greater than those thoughts. You are this perfect spirit that knows the way. I tell people, you live in this body, you know it the best. Others are just guessing what's best for you. And if you're up in here, you're guessing what's best for you. But if you can let this go, and let this intuitive voice come forward, then you really know the truth of your way. And there's 7.5 billion people in the world. There's 7.5 billion paths. We're not one size fits all. And that's what I saw in my medical treatment. It was one size fits all. Oh, you have this, take this, do this. There are certain routines and procedures. But what I'm seeing is that everyone has their own unique path. I'm not against medicine. There's some people that need a little bit of medicine here and there for ailments or whatever. Like organ transplant patients definitely need medicine to prevent rejection. There's definitely a need for medicine, but you got to find that balance. And I was not balanced at all. I was all up in here. I had no balance. If you get rid of this, then you get some balance. What does this body need? Does it need a little bit of this, a little bit of that? this herb, this oil, this medicine, but only you really know what you need. Others are just guessing what you need, but just finding your own truth.
Well, that's beautiful. And the thing that I admire about you is you didn't just wait on someone to put it in your hands. You did something about your situation.
Right. I took responsibility for myself. And that's what I saw when I had my team of 6 doctors. It was their job to fix me. When I started that meditation practice, I took back my own reins. But I wasn't focused on healing. I was focused on peace. And that's what I saw. The real beauty is that we need peace. For any of these healers that are in the world, if they're not addressing here and you're still dealing with stress, that healing is going to vanish as soon as that stress comes back. If the stress is not dealt with, whatever you had that was cleared will come back. If we have the stress, because stress creates inflammation. Stress and inflammation are the primary causes of disease. So if you work with an energy healer or somebody else and they're not taking care of the head trash, they're just workers on the surface level. But you got to work on the deep inner level. The inner level is this place of peace. And it's really hard to explain to people unless they personally experience. I don't know, how would you describe it? That's what I do. You experienced it. How would you describe it?
Like I said, it's the beginning of something better.
Yeah, it's the beginning of something better. That's what it is. You take away all the limitations and you just excel in life.
It's like you just feel like you do have some kind of control to a certain point, because now you have something within you that lets you know that is there for you.
Right. The spirit is there for you. It's just waiting for you patiently. It's like, here I am, listen. But this mind is this bullhorn constantly screaming at us, so you can't hear the whisper. Sometimes you'll hear the whisper through a dream. You might have a profound dream, because that's how your intuition, if you will, your perfect spirit is getting through. When you're asleep, it's giving you a dream, because the mind's not so busy. So it'll come to you in a dream, your path. So intuition comes in various ways. You might hear an inner voice. You may hear dreams. You may hear a certain song on the radio or a certain image, because spirit is always trying to communicate with you in the best way it can find out. But usually the mind is creating constant distractions that you don't notice. So we are in control if we have a little bit of awareness to just step back and realize that the easiest thing for the mind to do is either to respond or to react. To stop, pause, and initiate a new action is the hardest thing for the mind to do.
So if you was to do a little calming to share today, how would you do it?
What I would do, if people just want a little bit of calm, if you're just sitting here, just sit here and just feel your feet on the ground. Look around and not identify anything. Just look around and see all this abundance around you. And just notice and look around. Not label, and just find it. Because once you start labeling things and you start engaging the mind. So you just want to look around and just notice your environment. Feel your feet on the ground. Because I tell people your senses are always in this moment. The mind's never in this moment, because it's always guessing the future or dwelling in the past. It's rarely here. And as you start identifying objects, you're leaving this moment. Because for mind to say, this is a table, has to go back to its library. What is this object? When you go back to the library, you leave this moment to go identify that object. So you're just leaving the moment for a moment, and then you're just coming back into here to identify it. And that's why I really think it's important to tell people is that you cannot multitask. As much as the mind wants you to believe you can multitask, you cannot. The mind is a serial processor. It can only do one thing at a time. If people insist they can multitask, I have them do one simple task. On your dominant hand, write your name and address. On your other side, read a book. Write and read at the same time. You can't do that. If you could, that's multitasking. So that's why this mindfulness type practice works, because the mind is a serial processor. So you get to focus on one thing, like feet, what you see. It can only do that. It can't do anything else. It can't do, oh, look at me, let me look around and feel my feet at the same time. You can't do that. It's just one thing at a time. So the mind's a serial processor. The subconscious is the multitasker. That's why the thoughts keep racing, because it's multitasking. It's constantly churning. So you have to learn from the conscious how to quiet the subconscious.
I'm just letting that be absorbed a little bit.
Yeah, I've heard quite a bit that I talk too fast and let people absorb what I'm saying.
Not to me.
But it's realizing just that you have thoughts, but you are not your thoughts. You are greater than your thoughts. You are a perfect spirit. Everyone you see, even your enemy, is a perfect spirit. They're just simply lost in their mind. They just believe the false identity, not their true identity. If everybody knew their true identity as perfect spirit, there would be no crime in the world. Because why would you hurt yourself?
Wow. I really enjoyed you. How can people reach you and have contact with you if they want your books and your sessions?
Well, if they go to headtrashanonymous.org, sign up for my newsletter, they'll get an automatic response, with a copy of my book attached. And from there, they can schedule a session. They can find me on Facebook. You see, I'm very accessible. They can just reach out to me. You search Sam Shelley. I'll usually come up on Google first page. I Don't Dwell. You'll see that. Head Trash Anonymous or Head Trash Baba. I really call myself Head Trash Baba lately because that's really my skill. I'm the father of head trash, or at least the father of getting rid of head trash. That's sort of like my skill is. I'm just really embracing that skill that I know how to get rid of the head trash. So send me a friend request on Facebook and we can contact there. On Facebook, I might have my Head Trash Anonymous group on Facebook, my business page. I also have a group where I share hair trash clearing sessions and things like that. And there's all sorts of ways to get in touch with me, or send me an email over at sam@headtrashanonymous.org and we'll talk. We'll sort this out.
And Sam, you are on the Truth Will Set You Free show.
All right.
Give us a truth to remember you by.
That you are a perfect spirit.
Thank you for being on our show today.
Thank you for having me, Linda. It's been a pleasure.
And you have to come back.
Absolutely. When my next book is out, we'll come back.
Take care.
All right. Blessings to you. Be
Thank
well.
you, and blessings to you. Bye-bye.
Bye.